There are moments in history, flashes of light in the darkness, that are so bright they almost blind us. The raid that killed Osama bin Laden in May of 2011 was one of them. For a moment, it felt like a chapter had closed, a definitive victory in a long and wearying war. The men who carried out that mission, the elite operators of SEAL Team 6, were hailed as modern-day superheroes, almost mythical figures. But myths are clean, simple, and painless. The reality, as always, is far more complex and infinitely more human. Just 3 months after that historic raid, the shadows of the war in Afghanistan would fall once more, and this time they would bring a silence so profound it would shake a nation. It came in the dead of night in a remote, dusty valley with the catastrophic downing of a Chinook helicopter known by its call sign, Extortion 17. On board were 38 souls, including 17 members of the same elite unit that had carried out the bin Laden raid. It was the single deadliest day for U.S. Special Operations in the entire war. Suddenly, the myth of the invincible warrior was shattered. Behind the legends were real people with families, histories, and futures that were stolen in an instant. Tonight, we're not just going to talk about that tragedy. We're going to tell the story of one of the men on that helicopter, a man who was, in many ways, the quiet backbone of the world's most elite fighting force, a man whose journey from the plains of Texas to the mountains of Afghanistan defines a different kind of heroism, not one of headlines and glory, but of quiet consistency, relentless courage, and a simple, powerful philosophy: never, ever quit. This is the story of Chief Petty Officer Stephen Matt Mills. To understand a man like Matt Mills, you first have to understand the world that forged him. He was born in Austin, Texas in October of 1975, but grew up in Arlington, in the heart of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. This was a Texas of Friday night lights, of unwavering self-reliance, and of a deep-seated respect for service. It was a place where character was measured not by what you said, but by what you did, day in and day out. The America of Matt's youth was one emerging from the Cold War, a nation grappling with its identity as the world's sole superpower. But by the time he came of age, a new and far more ambiguous threat was gathering on the horizon. His decision to join the military wasn't born from the ashes of a national tragedy like 9/11. It came earlier, from a more personal sense of duty. In 1997, Matt Mills enlisted in the United States Navy. This wasn't a direct path to the glamorous world of special operations. There were no shortcuts. His first assignment was as unglamorous as it gets: 3 years of hard service aboard the USS Kincaid, a Spruance-class destroyer. Life on a tin can, as they're affectionately known, is a crucible of discipline. It's endless watches, monotonous maintenance, and the constant rolling motion of the sea. It's here that the foundations of a warrior are laid, not in the thrill of combat, but in the grueling repetition of duty. For 3 years, the Navy instilled in him a rock-solid foundation of discipline and an understanding of the vast, unforgiving power of the sea, a perfect primer for the trials that lay ahead. It was during this time on the Kincaid that the idea of becoming a Navy SEAL began to take root. The SEALs represent the pinnacle of the Navy's fighting force, an acronym for sea, air, and land. To even be considered requires a level of physical and mental fortitude that few possess. For Matt, it became the ultimate challenge. In 2000, his tour on the destroyer complete, he put in his papers for the legendary Basic Underwater Demolition/SEAL Training, better known as BUDS. BUD/S is located in Coronado, California, and it's a place where dreams go to die. Over 6 months, candidates are systematically broken down, pushed beyond every conceivable limit. They are subjected to relentless physical exertion, freezing cold water, and constant harassment from instructors who are looking for any sign of weakness, any reason to make them quit. Most do. The attrition rate often hovers around 80%. The climax of this ordeal is Hell Week, 5.5 days of continuous training with a grand total of maybe 4 hours of sleep. It's a nonstop gauntlet of running in the soft sand with heavy boats on your head, swimming in the cold Pacific, and crawling through mud flats until your body is screaming in protest. It's designed not just to test physical strength, but to shatter the ego, to find the men who, when they have absolutely nothing left, can still find a way to help the man next to them. Matt Mills made it through. He rang no bells, the act of quitting. In 2001, he emerged from the crucible of Bud S. and pinned on the coveted SEAL Trident. But the world he was entering as a newly minted special operator was about to change forever. Just a few months after his graduation, the towers fell on September 11th. The global war on terror had begun, and the demand for men like Matt Mills had just skyrocketed. His first assignment was with SEAL Team 3, based on the West Coast. The team's operational focus was the Middle East, and it wasn't long before they were at the tip of the spear. Matt deployed multiple times to Iraq in the chaotic early years of the war. This was the raw, brutal reality of counterinsurgency. It was house-to-house fighting, hunting for high-value targets in the dead of night, and the constant threat of IEDs. He learned his craft in the crucible of combat, earning the respect of his teammates not with loud words, but with calm competence under fire. He was building a reputation. But for the most driven operators in the SEAL community, there is another, even more demanding level. It's a unit so secretive that for years, the government barely acknowledged its existence. Officially, it's known as the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, or DevGRU. Unofficially, it's called SEAL Team 6. This is not a place you apply to. You are selected. Only the most experienced, most skilled, and most mature operators from the regular SEAL teams are invited to try out for what is known internally as Green Team. Green Team is an even more intense and specialized selection course designed to find the absolute best of the best. The physical standards are higher, the shooting standards are surgical, and the psychological screening is designed to find men who are not just warriors, but thinkers, men who can make life or death decisions in a split second, alone in the dark. In 2005, Matt Mills passed Green Team. He was now a member of one of the most elite military units in the world, assigned to Gold Squadron, one of DevGRU's 4 assault squadrons. His new area of operations, Afghanistan. Life in DevGRU is a relentless cycle of training and deployment. The operational tempo is brutal. These operators are constantly on the move, hunting the highest level Taliban and Al-Qaeda leaders. The missions are fast, violent, and incredibly dangerous. It was in this environment that Matt Mills truly found his calling, not just as an operator, but as a leader. He wasn't the stereotypical chest-thumping alpha male. His teammates remember him as something else entirely. They called him the quiet backbone. He was a man of few words, reserved and stoic, but when the bullets started flying, his actions spoke volumes. He was consistently the first man through the door, the first to expose himself to danger, the one who led from the front, creating a path for his teammates to follow. This quiet, relentless courage was officially recognized in 2010. For his actions over a 3.5-month period, he was awarded his second Bronze Star Medal with a V for valor. The citation reads like something out of a movie, but it was his reality. During that period, Matt Mills led his assault team on numerous raids that resulted in the elimination of dozens of senior insurgent commanders. He was the point man, the one who made the critical decisions at the most dangerous moment. One particular night stands out, a night that perfectly encapsulates his approach to combat. On April 4th, 2010, his team was assaulting a heavily fortified compound. The entry was proving difficult. The main gate was barred and the enemy was waiting. Without hesitation, Matt personally placed a breaching charge on the gate, blowing it open. As the team poured in, they came under immediate heavy fire from inside the compound. They were caught in the fatal funnel, pinned down. Seeing his team trapped, Matt did the unthinkable. He sprinted from his covered position directly into the line of fire and placed another explosive charge on the wall of the building where the enemy was shooting from. The wall blew inwards, stunning the defenders. In the chaos, Matt was the first one to charge into the room, neutralizing the threat and breaking the ambush. He had single-handedly saved his entire team from what could have been a catastrophic situation. This wasn't reckless. It was a calculated act of supreme courage. It was the physical embodiment of the leadership philosophy that he had come to represent. In the small, tightly knit six-man fire teams of the SEALs, the role of the assistant team leader, the team lead, is everything. He's the one who orchestrates the chaos, directing the breacher, the gunner, the medic. He is both the guide and the metronome, setting the pace of the assault. Matt Mills showed that the most effective leadership isn't about giving speeches. It's about being the first one to step into the danger zone. It's a philosophy that says, "Follow me, I will make a safe path for you." His actions became legendary within the unit. The Matt Mills breach became a case study in DevGru training, a lesson for future generations of operators on the vital importance of initiative, of taking calculated risks, and of sharing the burden of danger. He never sought the spotlight. He never boasted. He just did the job, consistently placing the safety of his teammates above his own. He was the quiet professional, the steady pillar his brothers could always lean on. And so we arrived in the summer of 2011. The war in Afghanistan had been raging for nearly a decade. For the men of DevGru, it had been a particularly intense year. The bin Laden raid in May had been a monumental success, but it had also painted an even larger target on their backs. They were the most hunted men in the world. On the night of August 5th, 2011, a U.S. Army Ranger unit was in a fierce firefight with a group of heavily armed Taliban fighters in the Tangi Valley of Wardak province, a rugged, dangerous area southwest of Kabul. The Rangers were taking casualties and believed they had a high-value Taliban leader cornered. They called for a quick reaction force, or QRF, to be sent in to reinforce them and help finish the fight. The call went out, and the nearest available asset was a platoon of DevGru operators from Gold Squadron who were on standby. Among them was Chief Petty Officer Matt Mills, along with 16 other SEALs, a combat controller, a pararescue man, an EOD technician, and several Afghan commandos. They boarded a U.S. Army Chinook helicopter. The helicopter's call sign was Extortion 17. It's here that one of the most persistent myths of this story was born. In the immediate aftermath, many news outlets reported that the helicopter was an MH-47, the highly specialized variant flown by the Elite 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. These are the best pilots in the world, flying the most advanced helicopters equipped with state-of-the-art countermeasures. The truth, as confirmed by the official investigation, was far more mundane and far more tragic. Extortion 17 was a standard CH-47D Chinook, a cargo helicopter operated by a conventional Army aviation unit. The crew was a reserve component, not the seasoned Night Stalkers who typically flew DevGru into combat. As the heavy twin-rotor helicopter lumbered into the narrow Tangi Valley at 2:38 in the morning, It was a large, relatively slow-moving target. The landing zone was hot. The Taliban were waiting. According to the subsequent investigation, at least 2 groups of insurgents were positioned on either side of the valley. As the Chinook began its final approach, a Taliban fighter, perched on the roof of a building, shouldered a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. He fired. Then another fired. A total of 3 RPGs were launched at the helicopter. The first 2 missed. The third found its mark. The warhead struck one of the blades of the rear rotor. The catastrophic impact caused the rotor to disintegrate, sending the massive helicopter into an uncontrollable spin. It plummeted from the sky, crashing into a dry riverbed and erupting in a massive fireball. All 38 people on board were killed instantly. 17 Navy SEALs, 5 Naval Special Warfare Support personnel, 3 Air Force Special Operations personnel, 5 Army aircrew members, 3 Army reservists, and 8 Afghan commandos, along with 1 U.S. military working dog. It was the greatest single loss of American life in the entire Afghan war. The investigation later revealed a heartbreaking detail. Matt Mills was positioned at the ramp of the helicopter, manning an M240 machine gun. He was in the rearmost, most exposed position. Investigators concluded that the ramp gunner, almost certainly Mills, was firing his weapon at the insurgents on the ground in the final seconds before the RPG struck. Even as the helicopter was going down, even in the face of certain death, he was still fighting. It was the only way he knew how to be. He was a warrior until his very last breath, living out the creed he had embodied his entire career. The downing of Extortion 17 sent a shockwave through the U.S. military and the American public. Just 3 months after the triumphant high of the bin Laden raid, this was a brutal and devastating reminder of the cost of war. It shattered the illusion of invincibility that had begun to surround units like SEAL Team 6. These were not superheroes. They were fathers, husbands, and sons. Matt Mills was a devoted father and a husband. He was a Texan who loved to hunt and be outdoors. He was a man with a future, a life yet to be lived. The loss forced a painful re-examination of tactics and procedures within the Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC. Questions were asked. Why was a conventional heavy-lift helicopter sent alone into a known hot landing zone? Why was it flying along a predictable, narrow flight path? Why was there a delay in getting supporting air assets like an AC-130 gunship on station? The tragedy led to immediate and lasting changes. JSOC overhauled its procedures for quick reaction forces, ensuring that such missions would have better intelligence and more robust fire support. The incident also accelerated the modernization of the Chinook fleet, fast-tracking the deployment of the newer CH-47F and MH-47G models, which featured more powerful engines, composite rotor blades, and advanced infrared countermeasures designed to defeat the very threat that brought down Extortion 17. On a public level, the immense loss brought a new focus on the families of these fallen warriors. The outpouring of grief was immense, but it also highlighted the gaps in support and insurance for the families of special operators who make the ultimate sacrifice. It spurred a national conversation and led to pressure on Congress to improve the benefits for the loved ones left behind. But the most profound legacy of a man like Matt Mills isn't found in military doctrine or congressional legislation. It's found in the people he touched and the principles he lived by. It's found in the quiet, echoing influence he left on the warrior culture he inhabited. The concept of leading from the front is easy to say, but he made it his reality. His story and the stories of the men who died with him became a sacred trust within the special operations community. His family, in their unimaginable grief, chose to build a legacy of service. They became involved with the Travis Manian Foundation, an organization named for another fallen warrior. The foundation's ethos is captured in a simple but powerful question that Travis Manian spoke before his final deployment. If not me, then who? It's a call to action, a challenge to live a life of character and service. Matt's family began sharing his story with students, not to glorify war, but to teach about character, courage, and the quiet power of selfless leadership. They transformed the painful memory of his sacrifice into a living model for educating the next generation. So what do we take away from the life and death of Stephen Matt Mills? He wasn't a movie superhero. He was something far more real and far more valuable. He was a man from Texas who harnessed a simple, quiet determination and turned it into a code of conduct for operating at the highest levels of human performance. His life was a testament to the idea that true leadership is an action, not a position. It's about who is willing to step forward when everyone else hesitates. His story and the tragedy of Extortion 17 forces us to ask difficult questions, both then and now. As a military, have we done everything we can to protect the men and women we put on the front lines? As a society, are we teaching our children that courage isn't about the absence of fear, but about preparation, discipline, and the refusal to quit, even when things seem hopeless? Over a decade has passed since that terrible night in the Tangi Valley. The war in Afghanistan is over, but within the hushed and hallowed halls of DevGru, when they talk about what it means to lead, when they train the next generation of operators to be the first through the door, the name Matt Mills is still spoken with reverence. That is how a quiet team leader from Texas left a permanent mark, not on a list of medals or in the pages of history books, but in the very DNA of his unit, in the actions of the men who continue to follow his example. His was a legacy written not in ink, but in courage. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.